and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my February wrap-up, which is really exciting because February was a much better reading month than January was. I read my first 5-star book of the year and I can't wait to talk to you guys about it, but I do want to just apologize in advance if you can hear it absolutely pouring outside. I will try my best to edit the background sound as much as I can so you can't hear it as much, but if you can, I apologize. But let's go ahead and talk about some of my very basic reading stats for February. So in February, I managed to read 8 books for a total of 2,507 pages, and I had an average rating of a 3.69. All of these stats are much better than January. I think I only read 7 books in January, and none of them were a 5-star, obviously, but my rating this month was a lot higher and I'm really happy about that. I had a lot more 4-star reads and then obviously that 5-star. But let's go ahead and talk about the books that I read. The first one that I'm going to briefly touch on is Foundation by Isaac Asimov. This is the last book I read for my reading vlog of reading books that you all recommended to me. So I'm not going to go too in depth about this one just because I talk about it a lot in that reading vlog, which I will have linked in the cards and in the description if you want to check it out. But this is a classic sci-fi book that I did rate 4 stars. I was very pleasantly surprised by this book, and I can definitely see how it's like made up the sci-fi genre, and this is a series I can definitely see myself continuing. So yeah, I really enjoyed that one. The next book that I read was Loud by Afualo, and this is someone who I've been following on TikTok for a while. She's very famous on TikTok, and this is sort of her memoir self-help kind of book. It's very weird in that it both talks about Drew's life and childhood and how she became who she is, and then it's also giving a lot of advice to other women and girls, and this was just a very solid book. I gave it 3 stars. I really enjoyed like the memoir aspect of it and getting to learn all these things about Drew, because again, she is someone that I follow and I just found learning about her life very interesting. Self-help books just are never really my thing. I've never found a self-help book that I really enjoy or get a lot out of, and the same goes for this one. Now don't get me wrong, I can definitely see how this book can be helpful to a lot of people. Just for me personally, where I'm at currently in my life, it didn't do a lot for me. I think if I was a lot younger, like in high school still maybe even middle school, then it would have helped me a lot, but now it's just kind of surface level, sort of be confident in yourself kind of help. And yeah, again, 3 stars. I liked half the book. The other half didn't do a lot for me, but I can understand why it would be helpful to other people. I would still recommend it if you are a fan of her, but other than that, I think it's a give or take on if this book will really do something for you. The next book that I read was Outdrawn by Deanna Gray, and I gave this one 4 stars. It is one that I buddy read with my friend Renaya, and I will have her YouTube channel linked in the description below if you want to check her out. But me and her have decided to start doing like a monthly buddy read, and this is the book that we read for February, and I really like this one. This one is a sapphic adult romance, and it is following these 2 women who are both comic book artists, and they have been like rivals online of seeing who can have like the best webcomic. And these 2 characters end up having to work together, and they clash a lot because they definitely have different ideas on what would be best for this comic that they're working on, and they do end up obviously falling in love. It was a super cute romance. There are some more harder hitting scenes in that there's a lot of discussion about like biphobia, and these 2 characters do have some family issues that are going on. One of the main things that I would say like a trigger warning for is financial abuse, and that one of these characters' family is definitely financially taking advantage of her, and that is something she has to work on and set boundaries about. And I really enjoyed that discussion throughout this book, but I would really recommend this book if you're looking for a cute sapphic romance, and I do plan on reading more things by this author. If you've seen my anticipated releases video, you will have seen this author appear in there. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. The next book that I read was My Government Means to Kill Me by Rashid Newson, and this is one I gave 3 stars to. This was a pretty solid book. It's like a historical literary type story, and it is following a young gay black man who comes from a very like privileged family. His parents are very rich, and he decides he doesn't want any part of that. He wants to forge his own path, and so he just ups and moves to New York City without having anything, and this is during the time of the AIDS epidemic, and he ends up getting involved in a lot of the gay culture in New York, and eventually that leads him down the path of activism specifically related to AIDS and just like helping out with people who are dying of AIDS. And this was a very tough book to read, and that it's very emotional, and seeing this character and all the things he gets up to and how different people are pulling him in different directions. I really like the story and just following this character. One thing that didn't get this book rated higher from me is just the writing style of it overall. This is written as a fictional memoir, so the way it's written, it feels like we are following a real character who's talking about events in his life in a way that feels very memoir-like. However, this is a fictional story, and there's also a lot of like footnotes and stuff. Just the entire writing style of it just really threw me off and would take me out of the story at some points. However, if you do plan on picking up this book, I would highly recommend the audiobook. I thought it was fantastic. And this was kind of just a book I picked up without knowing anything about it, and I was very pleasantly surprised. The next book that I read was The Spite House by Johnny Compton, and this is a haunted house horror story, and we are following our main character who is a dad to these two young girls, and after some events that end up happening that we don't know at the beginning, he is kind of on the run, but not really, where he is just trying to find some work, but he can't really stay in the same place too long. And so he ends up taking this job that he finds where he has to stay in this haunted house and basically report on what ends up happening and all like the spooky things that are going on with this house. So he takes this job, and him and his two kids end up moving into the Spite House. And yeah, it is a pretty short haunted house story, and I really liked it. I liked what this book was doing and the different take it had on a haunted house. I just found this whole story very intriguing, and yeah, I did give this one 3.5 stars only because the ending really took it down for me. It was not my favorite ending, which was so sad because I was enjoying this entire story up until the end. I just think the ending got a little confusing, a little muddled. It was a little rushed through. I just wanted things to sort of be fleshed out more, and I guess that is just because, again, it is pretty short. This book isn't even 300 pages, and I think if it was a little longer, it could have fleshed out some of these parts a little bit more, but overall, I did enjoy this book, and I would read more from this author. The next book that I read was Out There Screaming, which is an anthology edited by Jordan Peele. This one I gave 2.5 stars. This one was a bit of a disappointment. As with like all anthologies, some stories are really good and some just don't work for you, and that is to be expected. I've never found an anthology that I've absolutely loved or given like 4 or 5 stars, but this one specifically just let me down because I was expecting more horror out of these stories. I didn't really get those vibes from a lot of these stories. There were a couple of stories in here that I absolutely loved and I found very interesting. I didn't write it down, but I think one of the stories was called My Happy Place or something like that. And that one was specifically my favorite. That one is following this guy who is learning about the prison system in this sort of futuristic world in which these people, when they get put into prison, their minds end up becoming not their own, and so these prisons can use them as these robotic people who don't have their own mind or consciousness. And I liked that story. I found it very fascinating, and I liked the commentary that it was doing, obviously, on the prison industrial complex. However, most of these stories just it didn't do anything for me. I didn't find them scary or particularly interesting. So sadly, this one did get a 2.5 star. All right, we're down to the last 2 books, but the next one I'm going to talk about is I'm That Girl by Jordan Chiles, which I gave 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed this book. It was almost a 5-star book for me, but this is Jordan Chiles' memoir, and it follows her throughout her entire childhood up into adulthood of how she got into gymnastics, her experience with different people in gymnastics, and it talks a lot about her time being in the Olympics. And ultimately, this book ends with the big controversy that happened surrounding her Olympic medal that ended up getting taken away from her, and I was very intrigued by this entire book. I'm not a big Olympic watcher, and I honestly didn't even know about this controversy that had happened, so it was all new to me. I don't really pay much attention to the Olympics. I'm just not into sports in any way, but I did know who Jordan Chiles was and that she was a gymnast, and that's pretty much all I knew before going into this book. This is one that I got for free through Libra FM's influencer review program, so thank you to them. And the only thing that was keeping this book from being a 5-star is the audiobook. The audiobook's narrated by Jordan, but also someone else, and there would be like times where they switch who's like talking in like the middle of sentences or like throughout the paragraph and stuff, and it was so jarring. I just wasn't the biggest fan of that, but overall I was very fascinated by this book. I think Jordan went through a lot of very hard traumatic things throughout her childhood, and she talks a lot about what it's like being in a professional sport and the pressure that's put on you, and her time going through therapy and all of that stuff. And it's just a big reflection on the things she went through as a child to get to where she is now. And I really loved this book. I think it was really well done, and it is one that I would really recommend if you are looking for your next memoir to pick up. This is a great one. And the last book I read in February happens to be my 5-star read, and that is Tradwife by Saratoga Schaefer. Now, this is one that I did have on my anticipated releases video, like the first part that I did back in December. However, I was not expecting it to be my first 5-star of 2026. I was expecting something completely different when I went into this book. This is a horror book following this woman who is a tradwife. She is an up-and-coming influencer. I think she has like 5,000 followers or something on Instagram. But obviously, when you're in that tradwife lifestyle, you need to have a child. She's constantly getting comments on her photos or videos that she posts where they're asking her when she's going to be having a child, because she has been married for quite a few years now. And so she's constantly trying to get her husband to get her pregnant, but for reasons I won't get into, he will not get her pregnant, and so she resorts to basically making a deal with this creature to impregnate her so that she can have this kid and blow up on social media. Going into this book, I was expecting something a little more campy, a little more fun. I wasn't expecting this to be a super like serious or horrifying story. However, this book is very much a body horror book. There is a lot of gore, a lot of violence, and just like a lot of pregnancy horror. So if you are at all sensitive to body horror or anything, definitely do not read this book. But as someone who loves body horror, I was pleasantly surprised to find this in this book. And then you have like the commentary on tradwives and people who use children to get fame on social media. This book does a whole lot, and I just absolutely loved it. Again, very gross, very gruesome in the best way, but I loved our main character and this sort of journey that she travels on of sort of becoming this tradwife and then having this kid who is not human and sort of having to defend that choice that she made to have this kid. And it was just a really great book. I don't know how to talk about it to get more people to read it, but I absolutely loved it and I was so surprised, but definitely 5 stars all around. After finishing it, I could not stop thinking about this book. It was just so good. There were just so many points in this book where I had to put it down and not read it because some moments were just so gross. No spoilers, but if you have read this book, the toe scene, disgusting. But again, I love body horror, so it was fantastic. I love when a book can give me such a visceral reaction of disgust, and that's what this book did. So 5 stars all around. But those are the 8 books that I read in February. Thank you guys so much for making it this far into the video. If you did, let me know what your favorite book of February was, and if you don't want to do that but you still want to comment something, leave me some sort of pink Valentine's Day emoji, maybe like the pink heart or something. And yeah, thank you guys again so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!